Watchtower. The gate isn't anyone's idea of a home. It clings to the farthest edge of the solar system. 1,000 meters of armored corridors and sensor spires holding vigil, where the light from Earth fades to theory. I'm here because someone has to be. Senior watch officer, solar perimeter, tasked with scanning the dark for anything that might try to slip past the exclusion line. Out here, there's no backup and no comfort, just the station, the void, and the unending weight of duty. My turn on the roster, my shift on the wall. Duty, like oxygen, saturates everything out here. Not something you think about, just something that fills you until there's nothing else. I check the seal on my suit again. Old habit, muscle memory tracing the ring at my neck, though the indicator band glows a steady blue. Nothing leaks but time, I remind myself, and out on the hull of Watchtower. The gate. Time is the only thing that seems to seep through the plates. A technician's tether stretches between me and the station's backbone, the metal beneath my boots radiating the station's deep, restless shudder. Some men say you can feel the weight of all of Earth behind you, pushing you forward into the black. I've always felt the opposite. The universe pulls at you, thin and patient, hoping for a mistake. So I don't make mistakes. I sweep the sensor node with the calibration probe, watching the numbers stabilize on my HUD. Readings drift, infinitesimal decimals in green and amber, all reassuring in their small, predictable variance. The probe's surface is marred by a scratch, my scratch, last month, when I overcorrected during a meteor drill. Landry called it my signature, a joke for two men with nothing else to sign. Out here, where routine is the closest thing to prayer, every imperfection is sacred, even scars. The static of my comm cuts in, a crackle of local bandwidth and fatigue. "Hail, you still alive out there or just communing with the ancestors?" That's Landry, voice sanded down to a Martian drawl, all world weariness and dry static. He refuses to call me sir unless there's a third party listening. "Node 7, final sweep," I reply. On the hull, formalities feel more honest. You keep it sharp or the universe will sand you down too. There's a brief pause, filled with the background hiss of Watchtower's thermal regulators. "Copy that. Bring it in when you're done. Shift meals some kind of protein block surprise. I'll trade you a red ration for whatever's in the cipher case." Landry's jokes are currency. He never expects change. I reach down to my utility belt and brush my thumb over the weight of the Hale cipher. An heirloom masquerading as equipment. Its black surface is engraved with a family crest, nearly erased by generations of anxious fingers. My father's voice surfaces, unbidden. This is the last thing he touched before the Odyssey fell silent. "Not for trade," I answer, forcing steadiness. The cipher sits heavy, a reminder and a burden. Routine is the closest thing to safety out here. Every night. Cycle, really. But the habit of calling it night is hard to break. I check the same nodes in the same order, running diagnostics that haven't reported a true fault in months. The protocol isn't about finding problems, it's about maintaining the line, the unbroken line. I let the phrase hang in my mind, reverent, even as I smirk at myself for it. My ancestors would have called it something grander: vigil, watch, sacrifice. Out here, it's just work. I finish the sweep and signal the station for retrieval. The umbilical snaps me back through the airlock, leaving my boots sticky with the tang of polymer sealant and machine grease. I glance once, automatically, at the viewport as I cycle in. Beyond it, a sky the color of old bruises, not truly dark, more the absence of intention than anything else. The exclusion zone looms as a grid of data overlays on my visor. Invisible lines drawn by distant admirals, a perimeter stitched by fear and necessity. The decontamination bay stings with the antiseptic wash, 1,000 minuscule needles against the pressure suit. I stand still, counting heartbeats, forcing calm. I picture the schematic of the Odyssey as I've known it since childhood, traced and retraced on the wall of my father's study. A vessel meant to carry dreams, not warnings. I peel off my helmet and the recycled air of the gate washes over me, sharp with ozone and the memory of burnt plastic. Landry is waiting, arms crossed, posture all angles and old injuries. He tosses me a ration bar, real chocolate, contraband from a Mars runner. You missed mess. Command ping twice about your hull time. The brass gets twitchy when the old ghosts get close. I catch the bar, ignoring the jibe. Protocols are clear. Node readings were off by a tenth. Had to recalibrate. I say it by rote. But we both know the truth. I linger because I want to. Because out there, with nothing but procedure and the vacuum and the slow tick of my family's name, I can almost believe I'm part of the story, not just a footnote. Landry grunts. You're chasing ghosts. Whatever's out there, it won't wait for your permission to come in. He means it as a joke, but the words settle. On this station, we learn to talk around fear, not name it. To serve at the gate is to be surrounded by the weight of what has gone before. The silence beyond the static line, the legends of the generation ships, the endless, lonely task of keeping humanity's dreams fenced in. An alarm chirps, soft, almost apologetic. We both look at the main display. Sensor anomaly. The system tags it as a ghost. The crew's shorthand for any echo, glitch or wayward fragment of lost hardware drifting beyond the perimeter. Most days it's nothing. But this one moves. I lean in. The readings cascade across the screen. Displacement, trajectory, spectral signature. My hands move before my mind does. I zoom in on the data block, searching for the pattern I dread. There. A mass reading, too regular to be an asteroid, too large for a drone. The system tries to classify, stumbles, spits out an outdated Exodus-class ID. My throat dries, mouth filling with the taste of old iron. Landry glances at me, the edge in his voice uncharacteristic. What's got your attention, Adrian? I don't answer at first. I'm staring at the designation the computers offered up. Odyssey. 50 years gone. Supposed to be legend, supposed to be a warning. My mind runs the old stories. Walton Hale, the final transmission, the promise that they would hold the line. My line. I key the comm. Control, this is Watch Officer Hale. Confirm anomaly at Sector Delta 9. Vector inbound at standard approach. Advise. The response from Earth is delayed despite the tangle. Maybe they're consulting their own ghosts, checking to see if the system is playing tricks. Copy Hale. Maintain observation. Initiate lockdown per exclusion protocol. No engagement until further instruction. Lockdown. The word is clinical, designed for containment, not comfort. I call up the exclusion protocol, watching doors seal, system interlock snap into place. Landry is already arming his team. He doesn't need to be told. The soldiers he commands look to him for assurance, not me. On the display, the contact continues to approach. No drift, no hesitation. It is coming home, and I am the only one who knows what it means to call this home. My thoughts snag on the memory of my father's voice on the fragments of Walton's last message, holding the line, for them all. The first vibration is so subtle I almost miss it. A subsonic resonance running through the deck plates into the bones of my feet. My head aches, sudden and sharp, as if the world has shifted a degree to the left. Landry is talking, his voice distant. Contact boarding velocity, no IFF. What the hell is this, Hale? Every vessel in system space, even the old cargo hulks, runs an IFF tag. A digital handshake that tells you who's at your door. This contact is silent. No handshake, no ID, just coming straight for us. I'm watching the data, the Odyssey's signature unfolding like an accusation. Duty, like oxygen, can suffocate just as easily as it sustains. I stare into the display, the name burned in amber script. Something is coming in from the void, and this time it's not a stranger. It's family. Landry's voice sharpens behind me, the kind of edge that cuts through routine. Adrian, look at that vector. I let his words anchor me as I track the movement, hands braced on the console. Whatever's out there, it isn't drifting. There's intent, a steady correction against the current of microgravity and dark. The screen updates in precise increments. The object slides through our exclusion boundary as if it remembers the path home. My pulse ticks in my jaw, a metronome for dread. The station reacts with its usual bureaucratic indifference. Red icons multiply across the ops board, pressure doors locking, cameras pivoting, a long line of code confirming isolation procedures in a dozen languages. Every measure drilled into us for generations: quarantine, containment, the rituals of fear that let civilization sleep at night. Landry keys his own panel, summoning his squad from mess and maintenance. Protocol Delta, runners on standby. You want eyes on the gun decks or internal? He asks as if it's a choice, but we both know how these things escalate. When the system coughs up an Exodus-class silhouette, the chain of command wants bodies in armor, rifles pointed somewhere, anywhere, so they can tell Earth they did everything right. Gun decks. Full lockdown. No one leaves the core ring until I give the word. My voice sounds too formal in my own ears. I can hear the echo of my father in it. Walton's ghost maybe, or just the weight of all those stories. The corridor outside ops vibrates with hurried steps, boots on metal, discipline stretched thin by an unease that prickles at the edge of every movement. I see it in the young tech's face as he passes, his eyes wide and unfocused. The station breeds a peculiar kind of courage, all restraint and repetition. But tonight, the routines falter. The exclusion line has been crossed. The myth has a face. I pull up the visual feed from our forward array. The object resolves frame by frame out of a halo of cosmic dust. It isn't wreckage. It isn't new. The hull is patched and scarred in patterns I've memorized from 1,000 childhood viewings. Schematics, family legends, history lessons. The nameplate, distorted by the decades and the void, is still just visible beneath a shroud of foreign growth. Odyssey, my ancestors' ship, the flagship of the lost generation, come limping home from a silence deeper than exile. There's a pause in my thoughts, as if something inside me stops to listen. The comm chirps. Earth again, but this time the line is taut, the words chosen for deniability. Hail. Hold current posture. Confirm Odyssey-class ID. Await further directives. No engagement without express command. As if we can do anything else. The tangle keeps us linked, but the real decisions always happen out of sight, behind walls I'll never walk. We're the first, the last, and the only line, but always waiting for someone else's permission. Landry sidles up beside me, armor half-clasped, helmet hanging at his side. Did you ever think you'd see her come back? His voice is careful, stripped of the usual sarcasm. He's not asking as a soldier. He's asking as someone who understands what it means to be haunted by your own blood. I thought I'd die out here staring at empty charts, I admit. It feels like a confession. But I knew if anything ever came, it would be one of ours. He gives a half smile, all teeth and fatigue. Careful what you wish for, sir. The station shudders again, this time not from mechanical strain, but something subtler. A sound, too low for hearing, more felt in tendon, slides through the deck, vibrates the air in my lungs. I see Landry wince, hand instinctively going to the back of his neck. It's the kind of pain that has no source and no end. The warning of machinery straining beyond tolerance. Is that? He starts, but I cut him off. I hear it. Patch it through diagnostics. See if the AI can filter the source. The computer struggles, data feed scrambling as it tries to pass the signal. The result is a waveform with the regularity of a heartbeat, woven through with erratic surges, like choral music ruined by a metal saw. The pattern loops, never quite repeating. Even the machine can't find the center of it. The ops board lights up. Proximity alert. The Odyssey is in docking range. I take the Hail cipher from my belt and hold it in both hands. The surface is perfectly smooth, centuries of handling worn down to something indistinct and familiar. My father always said it was a compass, not just a keepsake. something to guide, not to anchor, but it feels like an anchor now. Landry's squad forms up at the central corridor, weapons drawn, visors down. The rituals play out the way they always have. Call signs, status checks, one last round of gallows humor to keep the hands steady. I watch through the viewport as the ancient ship drifts closer, the foreign substance along its hull glistening where the station's running lights catch it. The thing that was the Odyssey has come home, and all our protocols, all our training, suddenly feel as thin as the air we breathe. "Adrian," Landry says quietly, "if this goes wrong, it'll go wrong for the history books." I nod. There's nothing left but procedure. And the certainty that the line, for tonight at least, is mine to hold. Landry gives a clipped signal and his squad falls in, moving with the careful precision of men who've drilled this scenario 100 times, but never believed in it. The squad's boots strike the deck with a tempo too quick to be pure routine. I catch the set of Landry's jaw, the way his eyes flick between his men and the bulkhead window. Always measuring, always cataloguing potential exits and cover. On a good night, he hides his vigilance behind humor. Tonight, nothing is hidden. Even the youngest trooper, Bennett, carries his rifle as if it might make the difference between legend and obituary. I bring up the external cams, watching the Odyssey slide closer, every detail picked out by the station's harsh white security beams. There's nothing elegant left about her. The hull's been reskinned with a growth that reflects the light in shades that don't belong on any material chart. You can still make out the bones of the old ship beneath, but the outlines shear and ripple, flexing in waves, like muscle beneath torn skin, giving the vessel the aspect of something trying to disguise its own heritage. I scan for the docking clamps. Standard protocol, though some part of me is searching for a sign, a message. Anything to tell me this isn't the nightmare it appears. Earth signals through the tangle, short, sharp, bureaucratic. Odyssey trajectory confirmed. Maintain status. Await boarding assessment. No engagement. The words land with the weight of a locked door. I wonder if anyone on Earth has ever really imagined what it means to be here at the gate, tasked with being the answer to a question nobody wants to ask. The resonance grows stronger. Every bulkhead seems to carry a slight vibration, enough to set the fine dust in the corners moving. My vision tugs at the edge as if I'm seeing a double image. A warning flashes. Minor hull resonance anomaly. Non-critical. Landry glances at me, raising an eyebrow. "You ever get the sense the station's trying to warn us off?" He mutters, keeping his tone low so his squad won't hear the edge behind the words. The station's never liked visitors. My voice feels thin, forced into calm by necessity. I keep my eyes on the data stream, watching every indicator for signs of intent, pattern, message, a new alert. The Odyssey is establishing an automated docking protocol. Our override systems glitch, briefly unresponsive, then accept the handshake as if nothing's amiss. I enter my authorization twice, but the system ignores my input. The ancient ship is docking itself, ignoring our commands, and the air in the control room seems to tighten as it closes the gap. Landry straightens, helmet in one hand, rifle slung but ready. He waits, giving me the chance to say something. An order, a reassurance, even a final word of nonsense. All I can manage is, hold position. No one boards, no one opens the hatches, no matter what the computer says. He nods once, the gesture compact and final, and relays the order down the line. I watch his men settle into their stations, a tension in their shoulders that matches the tightness building across my own spine. From the viewport, I watch the Odyssey finally touch hull to hull with the station. The sound, when it comes, isn't the mechanical thunk I expect, but a gentle pressure that rolls through the deck and lingers at the base of my skull. On the feed, the foreign substance along the Odyssey's hull flows just perceptibly toward our docking clamps, reacting, perhaps, to the proximity of new metal, new air. My hands hover over the console, every muscle in my forearm straining not to flinch. A message, Old digital handshake, pre-programmed, spools across the station's comms. Docking sequence complete. Welcome, Watch Officer Hale. My name, clear and unmistakable. Not protocol, not random. The air in the ops center turns brittle. Landry's voice is a low rumble beside me. Not the greeting I was expecting. You know, Hale, there are times I almost wish for a pirate raid. At least those end with paperwork. The console prompts me to open the primary hatch. I don't move. I glance at the station's internal camera feeds. Crew gather near the entry corridor, their faces caught between training and the ancient, unanswerable need to run. Bennett mouths something I can't hear, pressing a charm to his chest. One of those little things families send, to keep the dark away. I stand there, one hand on the Hale cipher. The Odyssey waits at the hatch, patient as a debt come due. Through the thick glass of the viewport, its silhouette wavers, never quite settling, and I think of every story my father ever told me. How you hold the line, even when you know it's already been broken. The docking clamps engage, final and irreversible. The foreign matter along the Odyssey's hull flexes once more, its surface warping as if pressed by invisible hands. I blink, and for a breath it almost mimics the silhouette of a human face, lips parted in a silent cry. Gone the next instant. My mind catalogues it, shoves it aside for later analysis. There's no time for ghosts. Landry's voice in my earpiece. Motion by the hatch. You seeing this? I switch to the feed. The main corridor is washed in cold light. A dozen armored figures stand in formation, rifles trained. Landry at point, visor down, weapon ready but not raised. At the docking hatch itself, nothing yet. Just the orange telltale of pressure equalization, the mechanical sequence of locks disengaging. Our system never authorized it, but the override signal is flawless, almost elegant. I don't let myself think of whose hands first programmed these routines. A high, metallic groan vibrates through the floor plates. The hatch cycles open in measured increments, exposing the airlock beyond, a chamber now joined to the Odyssey's decaying throat. Even from here, I catch a whiff through the environmental system. A scent not of decay, but of something chemical and sour. The aftermath of a hospital fire. The pressure holds. The station's atmosphere does not rush out to meet the invader. Instead, a film of resin coats the joining, spreading in thin, filamentous lines, like veins. Hold, I say. The first movement comes from within the Odyssey, not a boarding party, but a slow rolling shadow, as if the darkness itself is heavier on that side. The first shape that enters is unhurried, almost stately. At first glance it could be human, suit still in the old Aegis cut, helmet fogged by condensation, limbs jointed at all the right places. But it walks wrong. The cadence is off, every motion just a second behind the rhythm of a living crewman. The squad tightens, Landry's hand signaling silent commands. Focus, range, fallback options. More figures drift in behind it, moving too fast when startled, then freezing all at once, hunting in short, darting bursts. Runners. The name leaps unbidden to mind, a word the old fleet reports used for anything that moved too quickly or too strangely in the dark. It fits. These things are always first through the breach, and never alone. "Identify yourself," Landry calls, the protocol precise, his tone all gravel and authority. The helmeted head turns, slow as planetary drift, and the visor's reflection catches the corridor lights, refracting them into patterns that writhe across the ceiling. There's no answer, no sign of comprehension. I see now that the resin along the corridor wall has sprouted strange growths, clusters of what look like teeth, or the vestiges of hands pressed deep into the surface. The Odyssey is not just arriving, it's colonizing every surface it touches. Landry signals again. "Adrian, orders. Do not engage unless fired upon. Maintain fallback position. No one gets isolated." I keep my hand on the cipher, pressing its weight into my palm. Training drills escape roots into my bones, the urge to seal the bulkhead and fall back as automatic as breath. But the Odyssey is already inside. The line isn't held by doors and guns. It's held by the decisions we make now, the record that will be written from this night. The first figure steps forward, resin trailing from its boots, head canting at an angle too precise for curiosity. Its right arm is fused to the suit at the elbow, sealed by layers of translucent matter. It lifts its hand, palm outward, as if in greeting or warning. "Do you see that?" I murmur, knowing Landry already does. My voice is barely above a whisper, a confession not meant for anyone else. The figure stops, inches from the line we've painted on the deck. A ritual boundary, a last defense against the unknown. It stands there, unmoving. The rest remain in the shadows, indistinct, their forms barely registering as human. Then, with a sound like fabric tearing underwater, the lead figure tilts its head and the suit speaker crackles to life. Not speech, not yet, but a chorus of low, discordant tones, somewhere between a chant and a malfunctioning drive core. The sound resonates through the marrow of my jaw, and I feel the ancient ache of every story I was ever told. The line must not break. The static crackle of the suit speaker stretches out, that broken chorus circling the line between machine and voice. No one moves. I watch Landry's stance, knees bent, finger tracing the trigger guard, breathing as shallow as the air allows. Behind him, Bennett's visor twitches with the kind of silent prayer only the new recruits still remember. Then, abruptly, the sound cuts off. The helmeted figure lowers its fused arm and stands, rigid, directly over the station's painted boundary. Its head tips forward as if searching for something on the deck between us. I notice the resin around its boots still glistening, beginning to creep outward in slender threads, reaching, testing the air. I log the detail, cold and clinical. Contamination has begun. "Environmental protocols up, tighter seals, all corridors," I order, pulse threading through the command. I can hear my own voice, flat, trying for calm, but the tension leaches into every word. The figure's helmet begins to delaminate, segments retracting, folding back in movements too smooth, too coordinated for anything human. The face beneath is ruined and ambiguous, half drowned in semi-translucent membrane. It could have belonged to any Aegis officer. Hair a faded brown, mouth slack, eyes filmy and wide, as if searching the room for a memory that won't return. I know that jawline. My childhood was spent memorizing the faces of the Odyssey's original crew, lineage, honor, a gallery of lost ambitions on my father's wall. This face was First Engineer Clark, I'm certain, but the mind behind the eyes is unreachable. There's nothing left to speak to. It raises its left hand in a gesture almost ceremonial. Something slides down from its palm, a silvery object tangled in resin. It falls to the deck with a metallic clatter. The gesture is slow, deliberate. The resin at its feet swells and splits, rooting itself in the deck plate around the dropped object. Bennett whispers, "What's it doing?" His voice is audible across the squad net, thin with disbelief. "Stand by," Landry says, his tone a clamp on panic. The silence deepens. No one fires. Even the Odyssey's shadows seem to wait. I step forward, just enough to put myself between the squad and the thing that was once Clark. The object on the floor is unmistakable now, an engineer's insignia, pitted by decades, still bearing the Odyssey's crest. They're returning our dead, or showing us what they've become. The helmeted figures behind Clark begin to shift, their movements synchronized, every gesture repeating the same choreography. From the resin on the walls, tiny filaments twitch, probing, searching, mapping the shape of the air. The atmosphere grows dense with the smell of burnt metal and a strange floral undertone. My mind races to catalogue the hazard: chemical, biological, psychic. Then the chorus returns, louder this time, a layering of voices upon voices, snatches of half-remembered lyrics and the droning bass line of the chant. The corridor vibrates, not just in sound, but in something deeper, as if the memory of the ship itself presses in. I feel the cipher in my hand responding, vibrations running through the casing. Adrian. Landry's voice is barely a breath. We can't hold this corridor. He's right. Containment has failed before the first shot. Protocol says retreat, reinforce, quarantine. Legacy whispers that you face what comes and record what it costs. The lead figure, Clark, tilts its head again, and the speaker hisses once more. This time, words come through the distortion. Almost, but not quite speech. Line held, all for... The rest is lost, swallowed by the growing static as the Odyssey's infestation unfurls another inch across the deck, claiming its first true ground on the gate. I record everything, every detail, the angle of Clark's neck, the glisten of resin spreading, the failed lockout command blinking in red at the edge of my display. The cipher's steady pulse beneath my thumb is the only rhythm that keeps my hands from trembling. This is history, I tell myself, even as the weight of it threatens to crush the breath out of me. Seal secondary access, I order, voice iron. Divert all Atmos monitors. No one breaks formation until I clear it. Landry relays the order. The squad withdraws by practiced increments, covering each other, careful not to cross the spreading filaments. Every movement is a study in contained panic. I see the shift in Bennett's shoulders. He's close to running, but Landry's calm pulls him back. We retreat down the corridor, step by step. The resin, alive, reactive, follows. It does not lunge or surge. It grows with steady patience, as if it has all the time in the universe. I imagine the Odyssey smiling behind its ruined hull, patient as a lesson repeated until it can no longer be ignored. Back in the command module, the lights are harsher, the air hotter, recycled too many times already. I scan the feeds. The incursion at the hatch is not alone. Secondary breaches at 2 other docking points. Our station, our sanctuary, has become a network of open wounds. A signal flashes from the Odyssey, compressed data encrypted on a frequency reserved for command-level comms. I patch it through the cipher, hoping for something. Logic, explanation, a clue. The feed resolves into an image, an ancient corridor, warped and overgrown, the walls alive with shapes pressed from within. Faces, hands, the imprint of bodies desperate for escape or reunion. Vessel scars. I remember the name from old technical manuals. I never imagined I'd see them for myself. A new voice over the net, filtered and broken but based on Walton's old command timbre. Hail, cycle, the line. The words twist, fragment, loop. It is not Walton. It's a tool using his image, his history, the family myth made into a weapon. My mouth is dry as dust. I force myself to speak. Landry, new plan. We don't hold the line here. We make them show us what they want. No more responding. We set the terms. Landry nods, silent but alert. He's seen officers crack under less, but I catch a flash of something like respect or at least curiosity behind his visor. Squad, we're falling back to Central Hub. Full containment mode. If they want us, they'll have to come take us. No more giving ground for free. My own words surprise me. They feel less like command, more like a challenge. Bennett, voice steadier now, checks his rifle's charge and glances my way. Sir, if they break through. We don't let them. Not here, not tonight. I say it for him, but also for myself. A line drawn sharper than the one the resin now covers. The lights dim. An old insult, but this time the backup systems lag. In the brief darkness, the corridor cameras catch movement. More figures entering, moving with that same puppet's grace. I scan the crowd, some still mostly human, others twisted by the Odyssey's living hull, spines arched, limbs fused with extruded cable and bone. Another message comes through the cipher. This one carries no words, just a flood of sensory fragments, fear, loss, hunger, a joy so vast and alien it aches. The pressure builds, migraine sharp, until I rip my hand away from the device. The resonance in the station walls grows deeper, a music without melody, until it feels like the structure itself is learning to sing in answer. The chant is changing. The crew starts to murmur snatches of it, old lullabies twisted by interference. Landry snaps an order, his voice breaking through the haze, keeping them from slipping further. The invaders stop just outside the hub's main hatch, pressed close by the resin now thickening along the frame. Clark's ruined face turns up, fixing its empty eyes on me through the security monitor. The station's sensors read a spike. Electromagnetic, psychic, hard to tell. The Odyssey is broadcasting, not just to us, but through us. I realize, with the clarity that only fear brings, that this was never about holding the perimeter. The Odyssey isn't breaching our walls, it's trying to make us open the gates ourselves. The real siege is inside the mind, and the line I have to hold now is the one inside my own skull. I feel the old family pride surge. If the Odyssey wants a hail, it will have to settle for the one who knows how to say no. Landry, prepare the fallback codes. If this place goes down, nothing leaves the gate. Not the crew, not the story, not even me. He studies me a long moment, then nods. Understood. You know, sir, you're starting to sound like an officer. Outside, the ruined choir of the Odyssey gathers at the door, their song rising, the resin flexing and splitting with anticipation. The next move is mine. My hands move across the control surface, entering commands I've rehearsed 1,000 times in drills and nightmares. Emergency barriers slide into place, thicker bulkheads, manual overrides locked. The central hub becomes our bunker, the only space on the gate still untouched by the Odyssey's slow invasion. Landry's squad fans out, weapons trained on the main hatch, every motion quiet. They stand in a careful arc, faces marked by exhaustion and something deeper. A kind of hollow anticipation, as if the world has shrunk to the thickness of these doors and what waits on the other side. The chant continues, pressing in from every corridor, rising and falling in sync with the surges of the environmental systems. I can hear fragments of familiar words buried in the noise, scraps of fleet oaths, nursery rhymes, the distant impression of my father's voice reading from an old mission log. Each time I catch one, it slips away, replaced by the ache behind my eyes and the static in my ears. The cipher sits heavy on the console, vibrating with each new wave. I run a systems check, air, power, comms. Diagnostics confirm what my nerves already suspect. The Odyssey's signal is worming its way into every subsystem, bypassing security with ease. The tangle link with Earth degrades, status pings slowing and then vanishing altogether. A new kind of silence descends, the one that comes when you realize you're no longer reporting to anyone but yourself. Landry approaches, helmet off, sweat shining on his brow. They're not trying to breach, just standing there, watching, waiting for us to blink. They're preparing us, I say, or themselves. The answer doesn't matter, action does. I scan the feeds. At each sealed access point, the Odyssey's figures congregate, resin rooting them in place, their limbs slack as if they've simply grown tired of standing. Some are still in the tattered remnants of old Aegis uniforms, the insignia half melted, half preserved by the resin's caress. Others are lost entirely, their bodies reshaped by the ship's hunger. None look away from the camera. All are waiting. The console chirps, a direct signal from the Odyssey, this time not encrypted. It's audio, routed automatically through every speaker in the hub. The voice that emerges is twisted, layered, 100 memories compressed into one transmission. I recognize Walton's cadence, my grandfather's ghost resurrected and flayed of mercy. Hail. The line endures. The line must change. Open the gate. Landry's jaw flexes, but he stays silent, eyes never leaving the main hatch. The squad holds position. Bennett mutters a short prayer, eyes closed, rifle steady. I key the mic. This is Senior Watch Officer Adrian Hale. The perimeter holds. We are not opening the gate. State your purpose. Static, then the same voice, softer now, almost coaxing. Join us. Share in the inheritance. The journey does not end. It becomes. I cut the transmission, my hand trembling before I hide it against the console's edge. Sir? Bennett's voice cracks slightly. What happens if we lose power? We don't. Landry answers flat. We hold as long as we have to. That's the job. I nod. We hold. But we do more than that. We learn. We find a weakness or we make one. Landry raises an eyebrow. You got a plan or just that legacy optimism? I manage a smile, brittle as wire. I've got the cipher. The Odyssey wants it. Maybe I can turn that against them. Outside, the figures at the hatch begin to sway, as if caught by an invisible tide. The resin contracts and swells, inching along the doorframe in slow waves. I see their shadows multiply, dozens of human outlines merging and dividing across the walls. I pick up the cipher, pressing it to the console. Its surface glows with a muted light, circuits within aligning themselves with frequencies I can only feel as pressure in my skull. I sense the presence of something vast and yearning behind the transmission, a network of minds stretching back decades, all bound by the same call. Return, merge, become. I close my eyes and connect, letting the cipher's handshake initiate. My thoughts are dragged through cascading memories, flashes of the Odyssey before the transformation, officers laughing, corridors alive with voices and motion, the sudden lurch into hunger, the pain of transformation. At the center of it all, Walton's voice, a single, unbroken thread of command. The cipher warms in my hand, the resin beyond the hatch reacting, stretching toward the hub as if sensing my touch. Landry steps in close. What did you see? Memory, instructions. The Odyssey isn't just here for conquest. It wants reunion, wants to make the gate part of itself. If I can get to the ship's core, I might be able to disrupt the signal, maybe cut the chant. But it's a one-way trip. Landry snorts, a shadow of a grin. No one's going anywhere alone. If you're going in, I'm with you. Someone's got to keep the roster straight. I look at him, gratitude caught behind command. Then we do it together. Squad, gear up. We move on my mark. Outside the hatch, the figures press closer, the resin blooming into spines and slender filaments that stitch themselves along the door's seam. We ready ourselves by rote. Armor sealed, comms checked, magazines snapped into place with the sharp clack of discipline. The squad's faces are grey in the emergency lighting, each tracing their own private ritual. A lucky coin thumbed in a pocket, a charm pressed to the inside of a glove. Landry's brief, silent inspection of the battered scrap can at his belt. I watch the ritual from the corner of my eye, reminded that belief, whatever its shape, is what keeps us from unraveling. I slip the cipher into its armored pouch, locking it down tight against my chest. My ancestors' last inheritance, the family secret we mistook for comfort, now the only weapon that might matter. The main hatch groans as we initiate the manual override, Landry and I braced side by side, the squad stacked behind us in a wedge. The resin flexes against the frame, its surface breaking into ridges and hair-fine filaments that writhe away from our touch. Bennett covers the far angle. All green, sir. On 3, I say, and we move as one, cycling the hatch in a sequence that bypasses the Odyssey's viral code, old tech beating new infection by a margin of seconds. The door slides back with a juddering complaint, opening onto a corridor transformed. What was once brushed steel is now layered in pale, organic matter, veined and ridged, the pattern both random and calculated. Faces press outward from the surface in silent tableau, frozen in the moment of transformation, their features stretched by hope, fear, or an ecstasy I can't name. Vessel scars. I see one that must have been a child, its outline small, handprints overlapping a larger pair. For a heartbeat, I almost stop, but Landry is already moving. Eyes forward. No one touches the walls. He barks, and his voice slices the trance. We advance in careful order, weapons at the ready, the squad covering every intersection as we push deeper toward the Odyssey's connection. The figures waiting for us move aside, clearing a path without violence or urgency. Their heads track our movement, and their eyes, if they have any left, reflect the hard, clinical light in colors I have never seen in any living creature. They watch, but they don't threaten. At the far end of the corridor, A hatch opens, a door into the Odyssey itself. I lead the way, cipher pressed to my chest, and step across the threshold. Inside, the chant grows louder, resonating in my skull, its rhythm twisting my thoughts, pushing memories of my own into strange, alien patterns. I feel my father's voice again, and beneath it, Walton's final orders. Hold the line. Hold it until it breaks you. We push forward, Landry at my back, the squad silent and efficient. We pass a shrine in what used to be a crew lounge, a grotesque altar crowding the center of the room, built from the detritus of lost lives. Shredded mission patches and the faded fur of children's toys are matted together with hunks of resin, their colors smothered in a waxy grey film. Vertebrae, finger bones, jaw fragments, all fused and nested among shattered mugs and medals. At the shrine's heart, a pair of spectacles with one cracked lens sits perched atop a tangle of spines, as if it's meant to see something sacred in the mess. A child's plastic ring, warped and yellowed, hangs from a splintered ulna, spinning gently in the moving air. The stench is a confusion of rot and antiseptic, old sweat, chemical burn, and the sweetness of spoiled protein. The resin glistens with beads of condensation, sticky strings dangling like veins. I catch myself staring at a familiar insignia, Odyssey's crest, now slick with whatever passes for blood on this ship. The squad pauses, every face drawn by the magnetic pull of horror and recognition, each of us searching for some sign of the person who once owned these things, some story we can name. "Don't stop," I say, pushing my voice through the nausea rising in my throat. "Whatever those things are for, they're not meant for us." Landry lingers a moment longer, his expression carved from the same stone as the shrine. Never seen a war trophy that looked so much like grief. We move on, but the image lingers. The shrine isn't a warning. It's a memory, transformed into something that can only wound the living. At the heart of the ship, the core chamber waits, once an engine room, now a cathedral of flesh and machine. In its center, a spire of living resin throbs with a heartbeat that matches the cipher's tremor against my chest. I pause at the threshold, the squad behind me, and lift the cipher. The chorus rises, every note a plea, a command, a promise. The walls are decorated with more vessel scars, faces, hands, even the curve of a spine pressed outward from the resin. Some are still recognizable, twisted in silent screams. Others are worn smooth by years of transformation, their features eroded to a generic ecstasy. Behind me, Landry murmurs, "I hope you know what you're doing, sir. This is starting to feel like walking into someone else's memory of hell." "I don't," I admit. "But if the cipher's the key, the lock is waiting right here." Bennett's breath catches, and he points to the far wall. There, cocooned in tangled resin and snaking power conduit, is another shrine. This one unmistakably personal. At its center, encased in a clear resin bubble, sits a tarnished sextant, the Hale family heirloom. My father's favorite story, rendered monstrous and sacred at the same time. My hands are already shaking as I draw the cipher from its pouch. The resin responds, fibrous strands unraveling and folding back, forming a cradle in front of the core. The squad draws back as the spire's rhythm intensifies, a heartbeat I feel in the pit of my stomach. I place the cipher on the cradle. A surge of data and memory pours through me. Walton's voice, the agony of transformation, the knowledge of what the Odyssey has become. The chant swells, voices doubling and tripling until it fills the chamber with harmony. The cipher interfaces. The spire glows from within, pale blue light crawling through veins and circuits, illuminating every scar and relic in the chamber. The Odyssey's mind presses against mine, insistent, inexorable. In that moment, I realize the line I'm holding isn't just for the station or for Earth. It's for every soul tangled in this monstrous communion, for every story twisted into a shrine. The core demands a choice. Open the way, join the chorus, or break the cycle no matter the cost. The core's rhythm matches my own, heartbeat for heartbeat, memory for memory. I lose the sensation of armor, of air, of Landry's presence at my back. I'm falling, pulled through a cascade of moments not entirely my own. Walton's voice finds me in the dark. Not words, just the sense of my ancestors' presence, as if I've walked into a memory already in progress. The agony of the Odyssey's fall unspools before me. Chaos in the corridors, the first bodies vanishing into the resin, the desperate decision to keep the line at any cost. My own thoughts twist in the gravity of his, the weight of duty doubling until I almost welcome the collapse. Then the construct moves in, smooth and certain, layering Walton's voice with something predatory and patient. You know what this is, Adrian. You've always known. Your burden is loneliness. But we can end that. No more fear, no more sacrifice. All you need to do is let go. The chamber's walls blur. Vessel scars ripple as if breathing, faces turning to follow my progress. The cipher glows in its resin cradle, caught between collapse and communion. I sense Landry shouting, but the sound is distant, filtered by 1,000 layers of memory. You want to hold the line? The construct coaxes, its presence curling through the synapses the cipher has opened. Then join it. Merge your story with ours. Be the unbroken link. I stagger, body and mind at odds, pain blossoming along every nerve. The offer is beautiful in its simplicity, the end of isolation, the dissolution of fear into perfect, indifferent unity. All I have to do is release the cipher. Let the resonance finish its work. I would be more than myself, no doubt, no failure, no end. But the faces in the resin, every shrine we passed seemed to contract and strain with a grief too deep for words. They are not at peace. They are contained, rewritten, erased. A gunshot cracks the tension, a sharp, brutal noise. I jolt back to my own body. Landry has fired into the wall, drawing the attention of the runners now advancing through the corridors behind us. His voice booms in the comm, anchoring me. Adrian, now, whatever you're doing, do it. I force myself upright, fighting the pull of the cipher. The construct lashes out, flooding me with Walton's memories, triumphs and regrets, the final log entry, the plea to hold the line for them all. But in that memory is the flaw. Walton never surrendered, not to the thing that devoured his crew, not to fear, not to the myth of legacy. In his last act, he chose to die unassimilated, even if it meant erasing the very line he'd devoted his life to holding. That is the secret. The line was never meant to be perfect, only chosen again and again, at whatever cost. I snatch the cipher from the cradle. The core howls, resin seizing and flexing. The feedback builds, the cipher vibrating so hard I think it will shatter. Landry is at my side, fending off a runner whose arms end in fused cables and broken glass. Bennett shouts, blood streaking his helmet, but holds the rear, firing in disciplined bursts. I jam the cipher back into the interface, this time pushing a command, a forced overload, the same protocol Walton encoded as his final safeguard. You want my legacy? I hiss into the core, every muscle locking in defiance. You can have it. Here's how it ends. The sequence detonates through the system. The core erupts in a blinding blue-white flash, resin bursting apart, vessel scars melting in a flood of hot, viscous ichor. The construct's voice fragments into 100 howls, then silence. The psychic weight collapses, pain, then nothing but the hot press of my own breath. The shriek of metal tearing, Landry dragging me toward the hatch as the chamber begins to come apart. Behind us, the shrines topple, spilling relics and bone across the deck. The sextant tumbles from its cradle, bouncing twice, before Landry snatches it up, tucking it under his arm as we flee. We stagger through the melting corridors, resin giving way to fire and ozone. Runners collapse, their bodies slack as puppets with cut strings. The chant dies mid-note. The squad forms a rough perimeter at the docking interface, Landry hauling me bodily through the closing doors as the Odyssey's core detonates in a silent, furious bloom. The Odyssey, severed from the gate, drifts out into the dark, trailing ribbons of resin and wreckage. I watch through a viewport as the old ship, finally quiet, tumbles into the black beyond the static line. The ruined hulk of the Odyssey spins slowly, growing small against the endless field of stars, its once proud hull coming apart in patient silence. Landry's voice breaks the hush, rough with fatigue but laced with something like relief. "You think that's really the end of it?" I watch the void a moment longer before answering. There's always something else waiting out there. Always another story. But this one we finished. He snorts, settling beside me, helmet dangling from one hand. "You know, if you write this up in your log, no one on Earth is going to believe a word. They'll file it under myth, right next to the rest." I almost smile. Good. Let them keep their myths. Maybe that's the only way any of us can live with what's out here. Landry glances at the sextant, then at me. "Legacy's a funny thing. You didn't break the line, you just drew it a little different." I turn the sextant over in my hands, feeling the weight of it. Old, battered, newly reclaimed. Lines aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to be redrawn when someone has the nerve. A quiet stretches between us, not quite peace, but the closest we get on the edge of the system. Beyond the viewport, the last fragments of the Odyssey fade into obscurity, the darkness swallowing everything the world once feared. I record the final lines of my log, each word feeling more like a promise than a confession. The story will be archived, redacted, locked away from curious eyes, but for now, I let myself rest in the chair, the sextant beside me, the weight of the cipher finally lifted. I survived my turn. I held the line. And for the first time, I allow myself to wonder what it means not to be defined by the past, but to shape whatever comes after. The gate groans as power stabilizes, and somewhere overhead, the old anthems of the fleet play on a damaged speaker, half melody, half static, barely audible but still holding on. Outside, the silence is deep and absolute. Inside, I find a kind of quiet of my own, earned in the breaking and remaking of every line that matters. Years slip by with a strange underwater quality, the details blurring at the edges and the shape of my life defined more by what I remember than what I can prove. Earth rotates beneath its quiet shell of peace. The mandate sealing off the perimeter and spinning a new web of deniability and myth. The Odyssey is gone, listed as orbital wreckage in the records, its name left to drift in the classified sections where history and horror are filed away together. They decommissioned Watchtower, the gate, the year after the incident. The official word was redundancy, better sensors, smarter AIs, a new generation that had learned to stop fearing ghosts. They flew me back to Earth for a parade of interviews, psych evaluations, and the kind of polite applause reserved for the last survivors of things nobody wants to understand. My final report was archived, redacted, the details sealed for the stability of the system. Even the sextant vanished for a while, shuffled into a vault before finding its way back to me, battered but intact. I live planet-side now, a world away from the hush of the outer dark. Sometimes I wake to the sound of distant alarms, half expecting to see resin creeping along the floor, Landry's voice on the comm. Those nights I take the sextant out and set it on the windowsill, letting the sunrise catch in its tarnished brass. The city hums beneath me, alive and oblivious, the line I held long since forgotten. Landry sends a message every year, always on the anniversary, always the same. Roster clean, still standing. He stayed in the fleet, promoted sideways into a training post, teaching recruits how to follow orders and, more importantly, when to break them. I suspect he keeps a box of scrap on his desk, the past measured in small weights and private guilt. Bennett never came back out past the belt, not after what happened. He runs a hydroponics rig on Mars, grows tomatoes, and tells stories to anyone who'll listen. I wonder if he dreams about the shrine in the lounge, or if the memories finally faded in the sunlight. As for me, I learned that history is a living thing, a wound and a warning. The mandate sent me a commendation, a pension, and the freedom to disappear. I took it. Some nights I watch the news feeds and see the next generation arguing about expansion, safety, the nature of the void. They recite lines about holding the perimeter, never knowing what the line cost or what it really protected them from. The sextant remains on my shelf, not as a relic, but as a reminder. I polish it on restless mornings, and sometimes my reflection swims up in its dark glass. I look older now. The resemblance to Walton is still there, but softened, his myth a distant echo, his voice finally gone quiet in my head. I no longer measure myself by the unbroken line. The legacy I keep is simpler: watch, endure, make the hard choice when it comes. Occasionally, when the comm static is just right, and the city's lights flicker in a certain pattern, I remember the last words I logged before the gate went dark. The line held. But it was never the line that saved us. It was those who stood watch, who chose to draw it one more time. The silence beyond the static line is as deep as ever, but I'm content to let it be silent, and to let the living make their own myths in the warmth and noise of the world we kept safe, for now.